All right, it looks like we are good to go. Welcome everyone to the session supporting today's Real College students. While we still have some attendees joining us, we're going to start with some questions just to get a sense of who's in the room. So DI, thank you for launching the first poll. If everyone could just answer whether you're student, staff, faculty, community member, or something else. If you fall into more than one category, you can select more than one choice. And then it looks like the other poll questions are also up. So if you could also select which areas of student basic needs you feel most familiar with or most passionate about, and then which areas you feel like you're less familiar with or you want to learn more about. And we'll give the poll about a minute and a half. Okay, if you haven't voted yet, go ahead and take this time to submit your answers. And we'll close in 5 seconds. Okay, go ahead and close the poll. So it looks like mostly students joining us. That's great. Thank you all for taking time out of your busy class schedule, and to the one staff member who's here as well. In terms of what we're familiar with, it looks like most people are familiar with or passionate about physical and mental health resources. We'll talk about that a little bit. And it looks like tied for second is food, housing, and technology and academic support. And then for areas folks are interested in learning more about, it looks like financial wellness is a big one, which is very fortunate because we have an expert in financial wellness with us, as well as environmental health. So thank you all for participating, and we'll go ahead and close the poll and get started. We'll exit out. Perfect. All right. Thank you all so much for coming. My name is Sierra Staley, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I serve as the Pantry Coordinator and Sustainability Program Assistant in the Office of Pit Serves, and I also chair our Campus Basic Needs Committee and Meal Scholarship Committees. So to give you an idea of what today is going to look like in this hour we have, I'm going to explain a little bit about how this session got its name and how our Basic Needs Committee was formed, and introduce some of our members and share just a little bit of what we're working on right now. And then I'm going to open the floor to some Basic Needs members who are doing some really phenomenal work right now in response to student needs during the pandemic and beyond. And then the rest of the session will just be Q&A. So without further ado, I am going to go ahead and share my screen. And see if it'll actually let me get in presenter mode. While we're waiting for that to load, I know normally acknowledgements would come at the end of the presentation, but for the sake of time, I just want to take a second to thank the Civic Action Week organizers, the Signature Days of Service Committee, and particularly Christy, who some of you know and saw on this call earlier, for her help in organizing this session. Our panelists, Joel, Michelle, and Leslie, for sharing their time, and our other Basic Needs committee members who couldn't be here with us today because they're fulfilling their role in student services right now, and all of you who are watching either via this live Zoom or Facebook or YouTube, or maybe joining us later on. Thank you all for taking your time and sharing it with us today. So I want to start the presentation by kind of crediting some of the other organizations who have facilitated this national context of basic needs and this national coming to terms with understanding that this is something that's happening in higher education and something that we need to engage with. The first is the Hope Center for College, Community, and Justice at Temple University, formerly known as the Wisconsin Hope Center. They've been on the front line of collecting data and measuring student basic needs and securities since 2015. And they've also championed the Real College movement, which is the name of this presentation that I absolutely stole from them. And the idea behind the Real College movement is it's a flipping of the script of college readiness. So traditionally, when we talk about college readiness, it's how are students getting ready financially, academically, socially, economically to come to college. But when we talk about Real College, what we're saying is how can colleges and universities be ready to support our students? Understanding that it's not just one type of person who is coming into college anymore. And we have students who are coming from a variety of identities. We have students who have extracurricular activities, who might have a job or multiple jobs outside of college, who might have families that they need to support. And it's our responsibility as higher education providers to meet them where they are. Within that movement, particularly, I want to call attention to the University of California, Berkeley, and particularly Ruben Canedo, who is their basic needs coordinator for really developing this framework around basic needs centered around the idea that meeting students where they are requires an approach that is holistic and proactive. And this picture on the right side of the screen is actually from Ruben's presentation at the 2017 Basic Needs Dialogue at Pitt. The idea being that basic needs aren't something that we just want to talk about or want students to know about when they're in a crisis or basic needs insecurity situation. It's something that we want to prepare students for as they're coming into college and make sure that our institutions are prepared for before our students actually get to campus. And then the final component of this context is that there have been a series of regional dialogues going on these last 4 years around what we can do specifically in the Pittsburgh region to support our students and what other schools are doing and what challenges they're overcoming and how we can take those lessons, work them together and really make sure that as a region, we're doing everything we can to support our students. And I want to take a second before I move to the next slide to say that I'm speaking about these things as being relatively new. So since 2015 or 2017, but we know that basic needs insecurities aren't new, right? This isn't something that students are just starting to struggle with just because we're becoming more aware of it. And I think it would also be a disservice to say that this is something that we're new to in student support services. So I want to acknowledge that this is something that I am relatively new to, having just started in 2017, but I want to acknowledge the work of the offices and particularly some of the other members who are on this panel today in spending the last decades working to support our students. So what we've learned in that process of student support on our campus is, in addition to external challenges, really there are two main challenges that we've been addressing internally. And the first has to do just with the size of our institution. Because Pitt is so large and there are so many organizations, departments, and student groups working in this area, there tends to be a lot of discontinuity or redundancy in services. So one of the challenges that we've been working to address is making sure that different providers understand what's happening across campus. And the other challenge is just a lack of overall data. So as student support providers, we have a lot of anecdotal data over what's happening with our students, but in a lot of ways, we're working in the dark because we're not sure exactly how many students are struggling with different types of basic needs insecurities, or what's specifically driving those for our students in the unique atmosphere of our campus. So in order to address those things, we formed a campus basic needs committee, and my screen is frozen. There we go. Sorry about that. So we formed a campus basic needs committee with the support of Dean Bonner and members of the provost office team just last year in 2019. And the committee has three charges. So the first is education, and that gets at that idea of getting wires crossed and having overlap between services. The idea is that staff and faculty should be able to know what's going on in other campus resources around them and be able to feel comfortable and confident sharing those with each other and with their students. The second charge is to identify gaps and barriers between what our students need, what we have available to support them on campus, and what community resources might be available. And the third is to take our understanding of those gaps and barriers, of those communication challenges between different areas, and provide recommendations to Pitt's senior leadership team for addressing our students' holistic well-being. So this chart on the right is a breakdown of our basic needs committee. I'm not going to read through the whole thing because it's pretty extensive. But just to recap, the composition of the committee is strategic in that our goal is to combine those student support staff, so those people who are experts in a specific area of student basic needs and making sure that students have resources to meet their financial wellness or food security or housing security, with our academic affairs colleagues and researchers. And those folks serve two roles. So not only are they often the first points of contact for students who might be having basic needs insecurities, but they're also experts in the external areas that are influencing student basic needs, whether those are social, economic, political, etc. We combine that with our operations team, which are the folks who provide not only the internal infrastructure, but also the external networks to allow us to meet student needs. And then finally, students, because what we know is that no one knows what students are experiencing better than students themselves. And Pitt students in particular are phenomenal at self-advocacy and making sure that staff, faculty, and administrators understand what's happening to them and what we can do to help. So the first thing that the Basic Needs Committee worked on was crafting this basic needs statement for Pitt. The basic needs statement contains 4 parts. So for this first bullet point is just our commitment. It is us as a university and as a committee saying we are committed to supporting students, both in identifying what their basic needs are and then meeting those needs to the best of our ability. The second bullet point is the why. So this is very much linked in social determinants of health. It is an understanding that when students have their needs met, they are not only healthier physically and mentally, they are able to show up as their whole selves when they're in class, when they're in extracurricular activities, and that's going to lend to stronger and better professional outcomes for those students and also everyone around them. The third bullet point is our vision of basic needs. And the 3 main components of this is that we realize this is a short and long-term journey. We use the word justice to recognize that access to basic needs like food that is nutritious or clean air has been systematically denied to community members across the country and in our own Pittsburgh community who have been minoritized on the basis of race, class, and other social identities. It's our responsibility to take privilege as an institution, as a large research institution, to address those things with the resource that we have. And then again, that this goes beyond physical health. So when we talk about basic needs, this is something that is social and emotional. It is related to the environment that students are living in. It has to do with their economic status. And then this last point is just the scope of basic needs here at Pitt. So as a committee, when we use that word, we are referring to things like food and housing. We are also talking about clean air and water and access to auxiliary items like clothing and hygiene. It's about making sure our students have their health needs met. And it's also about supporting our students in and outside of the classroom academically through technology and making sure they have access to career services. It's also about thinking about those specific and systematic barriers and disparities that are preventing some students from accessing those resources that are in place. So all that said, the first real step that I think really gets to that charge of identifying gaps and barriers in order to be able to make informed recommendations is gathering data about what students are experiencing right now. So I mentioned the Hope Center in my first slide, and it's exciting to announce that we are actually participating as a campus in the Hope Center's Real College Survey right now. So the purpose of the survey, and those of you who are students have probably seen this, is that it reveals the lived experiences of students outside of the classroom. So there are questions on the survey about food, about access to housing, about jobs and access to employment opportunities on or off campus, general financial wellness, other necessities such as transportation or childcare, and also how students are using or not utilizing the programs that are already available to them. So like I had said, this survey has been operated at the national level since 2015. It's currently the nation's largest and most well-established annual assessment of basic needs. This last bullet point that says more than 400 colleges and universities and over 300,000 students have completed the instrument is actually a little bit outdated because this year we had even more colleges and universities, and we're excited to be counted among them. And my last plug is that this survey is still open. So what we will do is for everyone who has registered for this session, you will get some follow-up information, whether you are a student, staff, or faculty member, around how to participate if you haven't, and some ideas for sharing the survey. We are starting our big social media push next week. So please do, if you are a student, fill out the survey. If you haven't yet, if you are a staff and faculty member who interacts with students, encourage students to participate. And that is the last thing I am going to share about the Basic Needs Committee and the Real College Assessment. And now I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to some of our Basic Needs Committee members, starting with Joel, to talk about the work they're doing and how that's been impacted over the last several months.
Hello, everyone. I'm Joel Philiston. I'm the new director of the Financial Wellness Program here at Pitt. I'm based in the Admissions and Financial Aid, Office of Admissions and Financial Aid, still new, still getting the lingo together. So today, I just want to talk to you about some of the financial wellness goals that we have going forward. Financial wellness has been at Pitt since 2016, at least a focus on it. So I'm not coming in and rebuilding anything per se, but I'm coming in and I'm trying to find those different pockets of where we've been practicing financial wellness amongst our staff, amongst our students, and finding a way to get those resources and get some of the knowledge that we're passing on all together so that we could really deliver it to our students in one easily digestible method. So to start off, I have a basic definition of financial wellness for myself. So financial wellness for me represents having the knowledge and the resources to make financial decisions and accomplish your goals. I know sometimes people will say, make informed financial decisions, but without the knowledge, without some resources, if those two aren't paired together, a lot of times you can't really move forward. I always say that you can't tell somebody to budget their money if they have no money, for example, right? So in a lot of ways, we're here to make sure that we give you that knowledge, but also point you in the direction of where you could get some additional resources to help you get along that way. So I break down our financial wellness goals into three things. I would say number one is paying for college. So something as simple as completing the FAFSA. I know in the background, you see I have this big old, like the FAFSA 2021-22. It's live, please complete it. But I'm a huge advocate of completing the FAFSA. Me, myself, I came from a low income household. I had three older sisters. If it wasn't for the FAFSA, I probably wouldn't have received the 3 degrees that I have thus far. And I started off in community college, moved on to a 4-year, when I never thought I would get a master's, but it happened. So it all started off with that day back in 2003, where I started at my institution and I was able to actually receive funding to pay for my education. So I'm very big on making sure that we're delivering that information to you, especially right now during this pandemic. I do think that some students may forget to complete the FAFSA. It has been one of the craziest years ever between just the pandemic and just even with people that we've seen who have gone on. I know everybody is like, was just out there. As soon as we thought about Black Panther, we thought about Chadwick Boseman, we was like, we give up on 2020, right? So one of the things that I really want to push is over the next few months, we're really just going to be focusing on how do we keep you informed about your financial aid, making sure that you're completing the FAFSA, making sure that you're doing it early, because there's certain grants that are offered through through Pennsylvania, that you have to complete your FAFSA by May in order for you to be eligible for those grants within the 2021-22 year. So we really want you to be aware of that. And where the FAFSA may fall short, thinking about some of the scholarships that we have, such as Pitt Funds Me, thinking about like Pitt Forward when you graduate so that you can get a portion of your loans paid off. My goal is to make sure that we're really getting that on Instagram and in the channels that you see information, which isn't always as clear, but my goal is to make sure that we put it in front of you as much as possible so that you could go from semester to semester. The second thing that we focus on, and this is the portion that most people focus on when they think about financial wellness, is the whole money management aspect of it. Now, I'm careful with that. I'm not saying money management in the sense of I'm going to tell you that you need to stop buying lattes and eat ramen noodle soup because that's what I did when I was in college, knowing that I didn't do that. So at the end of the day, it's really just taking the time to sit down with you and say, all right, well, there are some basic financial foundations that you will need to build while you're in college and after you leave here. So in starting that, it isn't really telling you you should be doing this, but it's like, let's sit down together and let's go ahead and look at some of your finances. I know me myself as a college student, when I first started school, I was terrible at managing money. It was my first crack at it. My parents, they were pretty good at it, but they never really passed down that skill. So, of course, I was getting overdraft fees, received my first credit card, and they say, you know, you have to make this payment, otherwise your credit, we're gonna mess it up. And I'm just like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't even know what I'm doing yet. But it took some of that time to really sit down and slow myself down and start putting things in portions, you know, simple things like making sure I bought my bus card on time and making sure I had enough money out of the part-time job that I had. And like I said, the goal isn't to tell you this is what you need to do, but it's to give you the option. So just as far as that money management portion, over the next month, I would say we're really trying to develop a needs assessment. I'm planning to do some, you know, student tour, some touring, listening sessions, I should say. I'm planning to do some listening sessions. I want to know what students want to learn about, you know, finances, whether it's about credit, whether it's about saving, whether it's about paying for college, whether it is about, you know, investing or whatever the case may be, some of those topics that you would love to learn about and how we could go ahead and deliver that to you. So that survey will come later in the semester, probably more so like November. But for now, we just look forward to taking in more information from you. And finally, the last thing that is our goal is to make sure that we're referring you out. So if there is a gap there, maybe your parents just lost their job. And now because they lost their job, there's less income in the household. It's being able to visit the financial aid wellness center or just being able to speak with us about that. Because there are times that we could go ahead and see if there's extra room in your budget where we could help increase that. There are also times that we'll go ahead and refer you out. So let's say you can't afford food for this month. That makes a quick transition between us and the pit pantry. And with that extra money that's there, maybe we could go ahead and help you figure out where can you shift it around, or hopefully we meet the need. But if we haven't met the need, then we could collaborate with some of the folks on this panel so that we could go ahead and make sure that you're here with us. So that will be like our three-pronged system of making sure that we're developing financial wellness with you, making sure that first your courses are paid for, then moving on to making sure that we can help you manage the finances. And where we can't manage the finances, let's go ahead and see what collaborations can we build to really assist you. So that's our financial wellness program going forward. We have some great folks in the financial aid office who have already built this, and I've been blessed to like come into this and just say, let me take all these resources, and now I just want the student voice. To finish, I'm going to point back this way. Please make sure you do your FAFSA or start your FAFSA. It's been available since October 1st, and I'll go ahead and pass it on.
Thanks, Joel. Leslie, you're up.
Okay, thank you, Sierra. And hi, everyone. Thank you for attending our session today and taking the time to be here. My name is Leslie Poljak. I am a librarian. I work for the University Library System on campus. My formal title is Outreach and Engagement Librarian. And what that means is that part of my work is to help connect undergraduate and graduate students to resources at the library that might support their academic life and also their holistic learning and their life outside of academics as well. So I do that in a number of ways. One of the ways that I do that is to serve on committees such as the Basic Needs Committee on campus that Sierra so kindly described earlier and is our leader for that. And I work with my colleagues, like those on this panel as well, to learn more about their departments and help determine what kind of resources and expertise I can offer in order to help support them in their work as well. So that kind of comes in two parts. So the first part, like I said, is supporting students on campus and supporting them in terms of finding ways that the library can help support them, as I mentioned, holistically and academically. I know right now a lot of students are hopefully finding helpful a lot of our support at the library just by meeting with librarians and locating sources that we might have access to, maybe that support coursework that are available through the library electronically. Students might also find some of the technology available through the libraries helpful through different online workshops or some of the physical technology that we lend out through Hillman Library. And another part of that is librarian expertise. So I'm one of many librarians and specialists within the university library system. And we really try to put together different resource lists that we think are going to be most helpful for students. And those could be, a lot of times those resource lists involves linking to curated lists of sources in different subject areas that might be helpful as you're doing research or as you're interested in learning more about a topic. Or that could be resource specific to maybe books that we have available or ebooks or electronic journals. And another chunk of that is a resource list that I helped to compile that helps support basic needs on campus. And that's what I wanted to show today. So I am going to put in a link to that resource list and just talk a little bit about kind of how that came to be and show you what it looks like and let you know how you can access that and then in turn suggest edits or different resources to that list as well. So I'm going to go ahead and put that link in the chat. And you're welcome to visit this now. And if it's okay, I'm going to share my screen. If that's all right, I can share the list itself. So let me go ahead and share that. So I believe right now you're looking at the we call this the Pitt and Community Assistance Resource Guide. And this guide came from an informal group that was formed a few years ago. That there was just some different faculty and staff on campus interested in discussing more about resources that might help assist students and the Pitt community in different types of basic needs areas. So this list was compiled by some librarians and specialists within the university library system based off of those conversations that we had with different support units and faculty and staff on campus. So, this list is really kind of an evolving list. I try to go in and make sure that the links are current and that the links are not broken and that the information is as current as possible. Of course, they don't imply endorsement, or they're provided for informational purposes only. Just to give you kind of a brief overview of the guide, this main page here, is a welcome page. We've listed some very specific University of Pittsburgh campus resources, so information about meal scholarships, emergency student loans, student toolkits, as well as information to financial aid and the FAFSA, as Joel had mentioned before too. So there's information about that. And then I also added some local COVID-19 resources as well. And again, that is evolving and has changed over the past few months as well. If you have any questions about this guide, you're certainly welcome to share it with other students or as you see fit. The link is live and is updated as needed. My contact information is here under resource guide additions. My email address is there, and that's available for you to use if you do see anything that maybe you think could be added or looks that it might need to be updated or something. So this is our home screen here, and then there's also specific information to food assistance, housing assistance, employment and health assistance. I also linked to additional Oakland campus support, which has some information, of course, about the libraries and clothing and TRIO support services on campus as well. And then we also added a link to regional campus support. So this is not just specific to Oakland. There's information about campus support for regional campuses in Bradford, Titusville, Johnstown, and Greensburg. So that's just, one guide that we have available within the university libraries. And this is, just specific to community and Pitt, basic needs resource assistance. Again, this is available 24/7. It's available online. The links are the links are active and live. But I think you'll find that, there's these resources, and there's also other resources to help support your studies and help to support, your learning at the libraries as well. So we're happy to kind of connect you to those or answer any questions about those as we move further into our discussion. So I think that's all I had to share. But again, thank you for your time and for listening, and I'll turn it back to Sierra.
Thanks so much, Leslie. Michelle?
Hi, everyone. It's a true honor to be on this panel today. I'm really excited to get to share a bit about the program that I am directing here at Pitt. It's called TRIO Student Support Services. And so just an overview of Student Support Services. We're a grant funded program. So we're funded through the United States Department of Education. And we've been continuously funded here at Pitt since 1972, which is so hard for me to believe. Now, I've not been here that long, but I have worked in the TRIO programs for 23 years, experience from here, as well as my former position at Clarion University. And I just love what we're able to do because I can identify with it. Being a former first generation student from a lower income family, I could have really used this program when I was in college, and I didn't have that opportunity. And so that's why it's really important to me that any student here on the campus at Pitt who is eligible to be an SSS and who's interested in being an SSS has that opportunity to do so. And so we also work with students with disabilities as well. And students, we have approximately 250 students in our program. That's the amount it's funded for. Typically in a year, we work with more than that. And students apply to participate in our program. So I'll put the website in the chat as well so you can connect with our application. But so if you're an SSS student, what do you do as part of our program? We have some of the main things that we do is since we have a smaller group of students, we are able to work with them more on an individual basis and get to know them really well. And that's something that I know that for me and for our academic advisors, we really appreciate about working with SSS. So typically we do academic advising. We are primary academic advisors for students coming in through the Dietrich School, but we work with students from all across campus. So no matter what school or college that you're in, you can definitely apply to be an SSS. So each of our students receives an academic advisor when they come into SSS, and we work with our students all the way from the time that they apply to be in the program, typically during their first year, all the way through graduation. And that is incredibly rewarding because we get to see the students as they come in and see how much they evolve and change and grow and learn. And then we get to celebrate with them as they graduate. We typically have our own graduation ceremony, and that was one of the sad parts of April. The many sad parts of April for us was we didn't get to do that this year. But hopefully we'll regain that again soon because our program becomes very family-like to the students that participate in it. And it's because we work together for so long. And so we tend to find out about all the needs that our students have, including the basic needs that we've been talking about today. The other important thing that, or one of the major things that we do in SSS is connect students to resources. So I know that when I was in college, it was really, I was an introvert, and it was very difficult for me to, even if I knew where something was, or somebody said like, oh, it's over there, you know, or it's over in that building, I would be like, okay, that's good. But just to get the like courage to go there, it's very difficult. And so that's something that in our program, we really, you know, try to assist our students in connecting, getting the confidence to go there, knowing the hidden curriculum or the internal processes that, you know, encompass the different resources on campus. So then, you know, they're off then on their own, taking advantage of everything that they have to offer. And so that's how I know Sierra, we've arranged groups of students to go to the pantry, so they know the process, they feel comfortable, and then, you know, then they take advantage of the resources on their own. We're in 208 Thackeray, and I'm actually excited to be in my office today. Because as you all, I'm sure know, we're in and out, but I'm in 208, and we are fortunate to be in the same space, or the same building as financial aid, because that's one of the main connectors. We partner with financial aid all the time on behalf of our students, and I can't speak highly enough for that office and all that they have done, whether it's workshops, speakers, or working individually with students that we have, you know, connected with them. So that's the really great thing about this committee, is the partnerships that, you know, have been made. And I know, like when Leslie was speaking about what she's done, she's come and spoken to our students, and students who have not really known like where to go in the library, you know, or how to like navigate. Like I actually learned a lot about the library. I didn't know that all these resources existed there. And so, so that's what we're all about. We have so many things that we do aside from advising and connecting with resources. We have workshops. We love to go on trips, Segway trips. We're trying to get to see Hamilton, which was just moved to 2022. But we have a scholars network of alumni who have graduated from Pitt and SSS that we reach out to, and often connect our students with them to, you know, benefit, whether it's just providing advice and getting into the workforce, or whether it is maybe connecting them to a potential internship. So, so we have a peer mentor program. We have classes that we offer that are 1-credit classes. So there's just, and all of these things are provided to students that are accepted into SSS free of charge. So, so yes, I'm going to go ahead and put up our website. So we are still actually accepting applications this year for SSS. It's been kind of an unusual year for us. Our program usually fills up really quickly, but as we all know, this has been an unprecedented year. So I'm going to go ahead and put this website in. Please feel free to, you know, if you are a student who you feel like you'd be eligible for what we do, the application is there. Please feel free to fill that out. If you have any questions, my contact information is on the website. And so I would love to hear from you. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. So in the interest of time, I want to make sure we do get to answer any questions that folks might have in the audience. Quickly, I do want to just remind our audience members about our campus food pantry. So I had mentioned that I serve as the Pitt Pantry Coordinator. For those who might not be familiar, the Pitt Pantry is a free resource. It's open to all members of the community. So it is students, staff, and faculty. There are no formal requirements. So that's actually relatively new for us. This year, we learned that in response to the pandemic and some other things that were changing at a policy level, There is no formal income requirement and no formal declaration that you need to do. So I think one of the most important things for those who may have considered using the pantry as a food resource or have friends who might be struggling with food insecurity is we get a lot of questions or comments from students who say, I don't think that I need this as much as other people. I think that there is greater need than what I have. And I think that's, that's very deeply rooted in this college diet mindset of it's okay to be eating ramen 3 times a day, or it's okay to be skipping meals once in a while to save money so that you can pay your bills. And I was one of those people as well, especially during my senior year. I lived off campus. It was the first time I didn't have familial support, and I figured that that was just part of my senior experience. And I just want to make that clear to students that if you are struggling with food assistance, whether that means you're not getting enough food or you feel like you're just not getting enough of the right types of food to meet your nutritional needs, food serves a lot of roles in our lives. Do feel free to utilize our resource or reach out to us with any questions. We are physically located in an off-campus building that is on campus. So we are in the Belfield Presbyterian Church, which is the large church that's right across the street from Litchfield Towers. Right now, things look very different than normal. So usually students or Pitt community members who are utilizing our resources would come down into the pantry and it would be a shop through process. We are a smidge too small to do that during the pandemic, so all of our services are zero contact. We ask everyone who needs food to fill out a form that is available on our website. Our website is pi.tt/Pitt Pantry, and I will also add that in the chat as well. But do please, even if you think that you are not in the greatest level of need, if food insecurity is something that you feel is impacting your physical or mental health, or just your ability to do everything you want to do and get the most out of your Pitt experience, utilize the pantry as a resource. And feel free to reach out to us with questions as well at pantry@pitt.edu. In addition to that, I just want to quickly announce a very new program that we have available for students who are experiencing food insecurity due to an unforeseen circumstance. That is our meal scholarship program, which Joel and I are both on the committee for. The way that program works is students have been donating at the end of each semester their leftover meal plan passes for the dining halls, and those passes or swipes have been banked and are available for students who are experiencing food insecurity to use. The way it works is there's a short application that we ask students to fill out. That application is reviewed by committee within 1 week. And then if a student is approved, they receive 15 passes that are loaded straight to their Panther card, so they can use them in the eatery in the Towers or the Perch in Sutherland. And they work just like a regular meal swipe. So if that is a resource that you or someone you know is interested in using, it currently lives also on the pantry website. So that same link that I'll share in the chat. And even if someone is not accepted for the meal scholarship, the other goal of that program is that we have student support professionals from financial aid, from our care team, and from other departments whose goal is to review applications and make sure that in addition to giving students that short-term assistance through the swipes, we're identifying what other resources that applicants might have not been aware that they were eligible for or might not have known about at all, and making sure that they know what they have access to so that by the time those swipes run out, they're in a more stable situation. And that concludes our presentations. So I will turn it over to Ellie, our moderator, to introduce herself and launch our Q&A session. We are asking everyone to submit their questions through the Q&A box, which is the icon at the bottom center of the screen. If there are any questions that we run out of time to, or you'd like to continue this conversation offline, we will all also leave our contact information in the chat at the end of the session.
All right, thanks, Sierra. So as Sierra said, my name is Ellie. I am the current Sustainability Engagement Assistant at the Mosquero Center for Sustainable Innovation. I just wanted to thank you all for being here today, both attendees and panelists. I just graduated in April from Pitt, so as a former student, I couldn't recommend these services enough. I wish I had taken more advantage of them. So if you're a student, please take advantage of these services. So I just wanted to start with one question that I do have for you all to answer, and then we will go into the attendee questions. So this first question is, as you all know, the title of this series is Civic Action Week, Discover Your Pathway. The Stanford Civic Pathways include community engaged learning and research, community organizing and activism, direct service, philanthropy, policy and governance, and corporate social responsibility. So based on each of your talks, it does sound clear that it takes all of these tools for the holistic and proactive approach to student basic needs that Sierra mentioned. How do you see these pathways impacting your work individually and as a whole, especially in light of the pandemic? So whoever wants to go first, feel free to go ahead.
Go ahead, Joel.
I might need to question one more time, actually.
Okay, so the title of this week's series is Civic Action Week, Discover Your Pathway. The pathways are the following. So they're community engaged learning and research, community organizing and activism, direct service, philanthropy, policy and governance, and corporate social responsibility. So based on your talks, all of these things kind of work together to approach student basic needs. How do you see these pathways impacting your work individually and as a whole, and then especially in light of the pandemic?
So for me, I know my whole career is based off of the inequities that I experienced in my life, I would say. I'm always grateful because I came from a great household, and I'm thankful for my parents for the job that they did with my sisters and I. My parents are from Haiti. They're two Haitian immigrants. Always wanted to go to college, but didn't really have that chance, but they always like passed it down on us. And I received resilience from them. So I'm grateful for that. But along the way, I had to kind of figure so much out. And even after I like graduated, it was almost like, I would love to, I started off in banking. I wanted to stay in banking and, make big bucks, but it didn't necessarily cater to my heart per se. Like I was so bored in banking and ended up going into AmeriCorps. And after going into AmeriCorps, I was just like, I do want to make some money. So then I kind of like came into higher ed, and I found the perfect match where I get to serve directly. So I would say like the direct service really means much to me. I really believe in like just giving as much information as possible and just being able to advocate. One of the things that I love like within my first month of being at Pitt is just seeing how everyone is so intentional and everyone really takes the time to consider what are some of the challenges that students are facing. So I feel like it all impacts me in that way of just being able to, serve our students.
Great, thank you.
I know for me, directing a federal grant and working with federal grants for my whole career, advocacy and the governance aspect is very, very important. We actually would not be here to talk about SSS if it were not for the advocacy that has been shown to via these programs throughout, from alumni, staff, current students, in being able to recognize that even though sometimes it seems like your one vote or your one voice doesn't make a difference. I've seen firsthand through the years I've been working in TRIO, we've had, we are a federal program. So, talking about the Congress and, we've definitely had I was working in a program called Upward Bound that was zeroed out by the President of the United States. And it took the advocacy of people just like us, just like you, all across the United States that went to their members of Congress, who then put this funding back into the budget, and those programs are still operating today. So we're constantly vigilant about our advocacy and how important that is for our continued functioning with this program alone. And that carries forward with every aspect of, basic needs and what, anything that is important to you. It's critical to take that step to advocate to, whether it's the state government, whether it's the university, whether it's, the federal authorities, because you actually do, your voice does have power, your vote has power. And so just speaking as someone who is sitting here solely because of the advocacy of other people and my own, I can't stress that enough, at least as far as this program and our experiences are concerned. So strongly encourage you with that.
Thank you.
And I'll talk a little bit about too, I find being a librarian, one of my most favorite parts of my work is really connecting, connecting people and students and faculty and staff to their ideas, right? And connecting them to information that can support their ideas and can support, learning about other, ideas and just support their learning in general. I think libraries tend to be, very, they can be very neutral spaces, right? So, there's different libraries, and someone might visit a library in person, or they might visit them online, and they might learn something new or find new information to support their learning. And I think that that's really important in the discovery of new information. And I think libraries support that, and they also support that, like I said, in person and in an online environment. And they provide access to a lot of more historical and archival information as well. And I think that that's really important too. And I think I had some notes written down too here as everyone was talking. And I think that librarians really support open information too, and making that information accessible. So there are some open access of information initiatives at the libraries, and making information, more available to a wider audience. And I think that's really important as well.
Definitely. Thank you.
To build briefly on Michelle's comment, it made me think about the need for both short and long-term solutions, which I think is a recurring theme both for our committee and for our food security efforts as a whole. And I think particularly for the pantry, there has always been a large emphasis on direct service and philanthropy, because we are 100% volunteer run. The joke is that I do very little. And without student volunteers and without philanthropic efforts, whether those are in-kind donations or actual monetary donations, I don't think we would have the capacity that we have to serve students right now. And at the same time, we also recognize that the things that are happening on our campus to our students are just so embedded in what's happening in our country, in our region. And one thing that comes to mind policy-wise is SNAP. So some of you might be aware, in Pennsylvania, SNAP generally has a work requirement that most students are unable to meet, because student employment generally caps students between 15 and 20 hours. And in order to be eligible, they have to work 20 hours. And likewise, most international students are entirely excluded from SNAP. So I think that there is also an element for those who are interested and willing to take up that charge of thinking about how federal and state policy is impacting our Pitt students right now, especially during the pandemic, when students are losing their employment and experiencing food insecurity and housing insecurity more than ever before. I think that's worthwhile as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So we do have one audience question, and I think we have enough time to kind of address it. So Daniel, thank you for your question. They ask, what are some initial steps that students can take to facilitate good financial habits?
That's definitely my question. To start off with financial habits, it's funny because sometimes people would say it's like simple math, right? But it's not so simple when you think about some of the marketing and all the promotions that we have going on amongst like our, our normal day, we always see promotions, right? But the first habit that I would really stress, and no matter who it is that I speak with, I could run into a millionaire right now and I would share this advice. It's number one, you have to know what you have coming in, right? So, what do I mean by that? How much are you receiving when you just completed a 20-hour work week? If you receive $200, $300, then that's where you start off with, of course, right? Now you have to start thinking about your expenses. It's about prioritizing what is important before you spend that sum of money, which we call a spending plan. Some people will call it budget, but sometimes I like to reinvent the word and go with a spending plan because budget it almost makes you feel like I got to stay tight. Whereas, like when you think of a spending plan, you're really thinking about a plan of what is it that my money will do within a specific time period. So, why is that important? I shared earlier how when I started college, I kept getting overdraft fees. Like every 2 weeks, I had overdraft fees. It didn't help that I was a part of some DVD club that just automatically withdrew funds from my account. But in the long run, I really had to sit down and say, I'm paying the bank $60 just to maintain a checking account that belongs to me, you know? So, like, one of those first financial habits is to know what's coming in. And sometimes that's difficult because as a college student, sometimes you don't have as much responsibilities, and some people do, which is where those gaps are created. But depending on where you're at right now, I would first say start off by knowing what's coming in, track what's going out. Second thing that's like very crucial, and I'll finish there, is establishing this idea of paying yourself first, making sure that after you've been paid, that you actually take the time to leave something that you keep. When we pay companies, we're giving them the ability to go ahead and live in prosperity, because not only live in prosperity, but they provide a service to us, then they pass it on. Of course, the CEO usually gets paid the most, and then you move on to the employees who get paid, and you've basically paid all of those people in that process. But if you spend your money so quickly that you don't take the time to actually pay yourself, then that money isn't there when you run into an emergency, or you have an idea that you would like to start something, or you want to maybe go on a vacation, or you have another goal, or you want to even donate money to a cause that really matters to you. So I would say, number one, know what's coming in versus what's going out. But number two, always make it a priority to actually keep some of the money that you've earned. So hopefully we'll talk about that over the next coming months as we figure out some of our workshops that we'll be offering.
All right. And that looks like that was our only question so far. So Sierra, I don't know if we want to close or, yeah.
Can maybe give it one more minute if one person has a last minute question, and alternatively, we will go ahead and put our contact in the chat so that everyone has it if you'd like to follow up afterward.
Great.
But while we are waiting and identifying any last minute questions, I just want to say so much thanks again to everyone whose faces you're seeing right now. You've all been a phenomenal influence to all of us, especially me having come into this relatively recently and trying to learn what basic needs looks like for me and what that value looks like for me, and also what's happening on campus. So thank you.
Thank you, Sierra, for coordinating this and being a wonderful role model for students like me or former students.
All right. Did we get everyone's information? Yes, it looks like it. So with that, we will close out our session, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your day and enjoys the fall weather.